Hi, everybody. Welcome to 2024. And so this is, I think it's about the 5th of our sessions. I think the very first one, we had a taste of what training for transformation is about, or just a taste. And then we were discussing how do we take this forward? How do we synthesize, and the idea of some kind of gathering, Fasil's joining, some kind of gathering this year was put forward where we could really explore how the synthesis could happen. And there was sort of mention, perhaps we can design by synthesizing these basically transformative approaches, we could perhaps design a curriculum which could be shared more widely with people. But anyway, I think we're very much an exploratory group. I think at the heart of what we're doing is saying exactly that. How do we create more linkages between these transformative approaches that have been developing over many years now, and some of them, all of them, in fact, and how do we really strengthen our work, link our work more, and use the experience that's been gained by putting these practices, methods, approaches. I'm never sure exactly what word to use. How do we really strengthen the work towards agroecological landscapes, or towards healthy land, healthy people, that kind of thing. So we then agreed that it would be really interesting to get a short overview presentation of each of the practices, methods that we're talking about. Of course, none of these do justice to them because they're complex and so on. But so far we've had 2 since we decided. Simon presented on the Earth jurisprudence, ABN methodologies, and gave us an idea of how he and his team at SALT in Kenya are working with communities. And Walter gave us an overview of the integrated land use design approach, which he's working with in schools, but also in the SKY program. Just last week, we were together in Chimanimani district, where we were visiting a community there that's working at a landscape level. And the foundation of that work included a training by Walter using the integrated land use design approach. So we've had that. And so today, Precious is joining us, and thanks a lot to Precious for joining us, especially at this time, and is going to share her experience with holistic management and working with communities. I'm not sure exactly what it'll be, so I don't want to try and describe it. But thanks, Precious. So I think let's get going and hear from Precious, and then we keep it to an hour, these calls, so they're not long. It'll be recorded, so we're getting a nice set of recordings that are good overviews, introductions to these approaches. So it'll be recorded for those. Some people said that they couldn't make it. So, Precious, over to you to kind of, if you want to say a bit more about yourself. I don't know, there may be some who don't know. And yeah, go ahead. Great to see you, looking really well.
Thank you. When someone says that these days, I just laugh, but thank you. Well,
that often happens, doesn't
it? Yeah. Okay. So hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, and what a great privilege it is to just also come and share a bit of some lessons from my side of the world. I'm Precious Phiri, working with communities in Hwange West, but basically based in North Northwest Hwange, Northwest Zimbabwe, the nation. So I'm just going to share with you a bit of some lessons from the work as John has described using the holistic management framework. I think I'm allowed to share a screen. Yes, okay. I prepared some PowerPoint, but mostly to be to just show a bit of the design of work, including some pictures of what kind of results we have. So I know I have about maybe 15 to 20 minutes to share with you here. So I'll try and make the most of that time. So, so I usually work with a community group called Igugu Trust. It's a small organization that we founded. I'm a main founder of this organization because I felt the need to continue working with communities after transitioning from my full-time job, which was at the Africa Center for Holistic Management, called ACHM, which is one of the first hubs of the Phiri movement, where they do holistic management at a private scale, but a very good place for learning and seeing what is possible on the ground. But because I was always exposed to working with communities and being a rural raised child myself, I kept very keen to see, what would it take for communities to come together in action, given the holistic management framework and the main tool that is recommended or that we have seen is going to help us heal our landscape at a broader level. So I was keen to explore what that kind of design looks like. So that's how Igugu Trust came to be, registered basically in 2017, but effectively started working in 2019 and then a COVID break. But lots of work experience prior to that. So I'd been practicing with Africa Center for about 10 years and then started now working with a smaller scale, smaller or no budgets at all. But so it would be nice to just share that story today, and you can keep your questions and we can discuss later in case I skip some things. So the location here, it's in the Hwange district. So we have, I think we have a very unique privilege of being located near the Africa Center itself, the ACHM learning site. And then here's the communities that we work with. So we started off with 3 communities, but now improved to 5. So maybe effectively 2, then 3, then 5 that are sharing boundaries, natural resource boundaries, and probably economic boundaries and social boundaries. 129 of those, there's about 276 households, and 129 are large livestock owners. 7,000 hectares of communal landscape that's under grazing, 2,000 which is managed by a different partner, forestry, and then 594 under cropping. And then our neighbor ACHM is managing about 3,200 hectares. So the dynamics with this work is, I don't know how many of you are aware of holistic management. It is a decision-making framework, and maybe we'll be unpacking it as we go, really meant to help a farm manager or a communal person to navigate the web of the complexities and linkages between ecology, the economy, and how they relate to one another. And so trying to build these projects that will cause communities to thrive or individuals to thrive at all levels without disadvantaging one of those pillars of life, which is the livelihood and how we relate and how we live with each other. And also how then do we relate with our nature, which most of you, as you know, these are very dry lands, very little rainfall. We're in natural region 4 and 5 of Zimbabwe, which is the least rainfall receivers, always almost hit by the long dry spells. And as I speak right now, we're in the middle of El Nino phenomenon, which is, this is day 17 without rain and very high temperatures. So crops are already giving up. So it's so important to create also resiliency in these communities. And so yeah, let's get to it. That's a little bit about where we work. Let's see, I'll try that. Okay. But the main tool that we use, holistic management, has a set of toolbox that you then pick what to use as your region demands. But some of it, some people where you are, maybe the toolbox of holistic management doesn't have what you will need. But then holistic management actually should help you pick tools that are relevant to your own place, tools that will enhance where you're managing and what you're doing. So in our case, the main tool is because we have vast, large landscapes that are degrading on a daily, harsh, sandy soils, and barely enough forage if you do not manage it well. So we have an access of the tool of goats and cattle and sheep, whatever you have. So to the right here, we have a mixed herd from Holistic Management Center, Dimbangombe, that I just wanted to show you that this is exactly where we learn. That's how they do it. And then in the middle here is the communal herd. Yeah, so this is a simple decision-making framework, but I think facilitating it in the community needs a facilitator or an organization to really be flexible, because I guess that's how you can then manage complexity, by continuously listening and seeing what sort of pillars will fortify or strengthen the work that you're trying to build. So with the communities, I think one of our greatest privileges in this work has been to be able to build like a common vision of values. And so here I just translated it. It's written in Ndebele, because these are Ndebele communities, but I just took advantage of the English language so that we can all read and see what kind of statements are involved in this vision of values, which is called the holistic context. So it has three aspects, which is the quality of life, the future resource base, and but under the future resource base is what kind of behavior do we want to portray, and then what sort of environment do we want to eventually live in, or do we want that will support the dreams that we have. And it's a lot of facilitation before you get to the visioning process, because I feel like part of our values has been centered on building a strong partnership with communities, understanding how we will work together. So defining some principles of how we'll engage, because also this is a place that is flooded with multi-million-dollar NGOs. So communities are easily tempted to saying, so what are you bringing to the table for us? Unfortunately, for our case, we didn't have physical materials or money that we were flashing out, because we started off with barely no funding. But at least the content and building the dignity of being honest of what we have. And then we started working from leadership to the communities. And we built this vision that you see here, where people define the quality of life they desire, and then how do they want to be perceived, like their cultural norms. And some of the norms have been lost. So sometimes you facilitate a little more for people to dream how they used to be and what do they think this could apply in this day. Okay. And then when you pass that, so now I'm just showing you a bit of the design process, what has worked for in my experience, and how I've designed this program for Ndlovu, because at Igugu Trust, I'm the program developer, sort of, so that I guide the process. And we have community coordinators who are helping us implement on the ground. And then I'm usually the trainer and Africa Center, and now the coordinators at community level are also training. So the core of this work is using well-managed livestock to bring back ecological diversity, economic and social stability to the community. And then what are the pillars that then surround that work? You certainly can't say we'll just do grazing only, because even if you have enough rangelands, what are the other pieces that will make this community thrive towards that economic sustainability or social stability? And then we have, on the other piece, without a healthy landscape, you cannot have manure or natural fertilizers that go into your crop fields. So we have this landscape regeneration, which is the biggest sort of practice, again, words, but we use different kinds of livestock. So you can use cattle or goats. And then ecological cropping, crop farming. So livestock will go to the landscape, bring back their manure to the crows, to the crop fields, and then you impact, and then you can have food. And then directly, ecological crop farming. What else can make this an exciting journey? We developed seed and food systems that we will eat local food, and then we'll start creating seed banks. And then in the process, people start to come and learn, how can we document our story and how can we tell it from our community? And we host exchange visits. And then all these things are pulled and tied together by continuous social and economic strengthening. And I'll show you how these link together just in photos in a minute. Sorry, the first few slides were me talking a lot and a lot of written things. But the 4 pillars clearly are landscape regeneration, ecological crop farming, seed and food systems, social strengthening. And this is not exhaustive. As you learn, you'll find that, oh my God, there's this other pillar again. So this thing keeps transforming and keeps changing so that you fulfill what the communities dream and what you dream to be in terms of being a community that is ecologically sustainable. So now I'm going to start showing the pictures. The first pillar of landscape level regeneration, that's how I shaped out the story. Tools, the main tool is landscape regeneration by using grazing animals. So to grazing, time is more important than the numbers. So how the animals move and how often they will move across the landscape. So lots of talking with herders, with farmers, and with leaders, because then here leaders come in and they give us, again, guidelines of what we call social bylaws, because then the village heads, the headmen, and the chief will have to help guide the process, because one community sometimes graze to protect crop fields, but then eventually when they see the results, they'll start to take their animals for grazing to protect the grassland so that they have enough for the drier spell. So we have about 4 months of rain, supposed to be 4 months of growing season from mid-November to mid-March. But effectively, like the last season, 2022 to 2023, in those 4 months, we only had rainfall, actual rainfall, even if we recorded 622 mils, which was a lot, but it was only within 21 days. So the rest of the 4 months were dry, intermittent dry spells. And then this year, our season ends in mid-March. The rain started towards Christmas in December, and then we only had rain over 9 days, and the season ends next month. So if you do not put due diligence in managing the rangelands so that you move your animals away to grow enough grass, you may then suffer starvation and then loss of livestock and loss of crops. So the resilience is to make sure that if we lose on crops, we can still have livestock to sell and people can still feed themselves. And so these are just maps that we created, and this is for this season. This was created in December, preparing for this growing season. So the farmers know, according to the chart to the right here, where we are moving to next, according to the map. And these are the movement roads. So we move like this. Each farmer keeps their livestock at home, but then they move together in the end. So the whole idea in the end is to make sure that we enhance, by working with nature, we enhance the landscape ability to sustain life, store water, and also takes care of the people and the wildlife. We are in wildlife zones. So in the non-growing season, which is the dry season, you are still able, if you manage well, to not see any soil in the landscape and still receive rain, and water here will not run off quickly, but you can capture it and put it in the soil. And then in the peak of the growing season, you would have grown your grass that is able to sustain your livestock in the dry season. So some results, you go out to the communities to see this paddock on the left was overly exposed to grazing. So you can see the difference already in the growth rate of forage. So here we said, how much space does an animal need to feed in one day? So farmers know, and they'll just extend. You don't need a lot of science because they know how much their animals will eat. So one cow, for example, that will be our unit. They said, well, it probably needs about 17 by 18 meters per day in this paddock. Then the next paddock that we went to, no, it needs 5 meters by 4 meters to feed per day. So there's your answer. Then they will know that, oh my goodness, so here we missed out on an opportunity to grow grass, the same way we are growing maize. But more than just maize, we missed out on enhancing our landscape to make the most of the sun to grow food. In the dry season, again, you can visit the grazing areas where there's consistent animal presence. You're already seeing soil and the rains are not close by. So by the time it's raining, it's all bare and the soil and the dust is lifting off. And then this area still has some grass. And then farmers enhance now the nutrition of their animals by bringing in salt, what you call them, mineral blocks, but they put them in the crawls where the animals will sleep overnight so that animals can have a salt leak in case there is a nutrition shortage. That's some of the pillars that you also need: the care of the animal, the care of the land, and the well-being of the farmer. It's a picture from literally on Wednesday, when we went to the community to check out on how are the grazing areas doing. One of the groups, they panicked because they were worried about livestock well-being. So they are in their prime paddock at the wrong time, not according to the grazing plan, but you understand because it's a time of panic. So look at that grassland. Already the animals are eating close to the ground, yet this is a forested area. We have resources of eating leaves and everything, and animals will not lose condition because we have a longer dry spell ahead of us. But anyway, that is being fixed now, but I wanted to show you what can happen to the landscape if you do not remove animals in good time for recovery. And then same day, neighboring cluster, their non-growing season paddock, look how it's looking. Same rains, this grass could have been taller, but a little bit of management is taking them a long way because they still manage to keep some grass and their animals will be safe. And these ones still have a chance because if we have like a week of rain in the next whatever many days, this will still recover and still regrow. So there's still a chance to replan. Again, it's not a perfect dance, but it's always by looking and seeing. These are animals from the paddock, from the cluster that is following. They're coming from the forest where they are designated to be grazing now. That condition is looking good. And part of the work that we do, we are going to be working on animal ages now so that people have animals that will be resilient when it's dry and they can still sell them even if it's in the driest of seasons. They wouldn't have lost too much condition. So a pillar for landscape regeneration has been focusing on livestock health. We work with the vet and paravets to make sure that we manage the health of the livestock and then they can carry the work. So we have about 680 cattle from the community villages that we work with that are under the management of holistic management in this community. And then you bring that notion to the next pillar of ecological cropping. I'm almost done. I think this will be the last big one. So you can compare the soils. The soils are very sandy here. Most of it, there is no food in the soil. So people, sometimes they just use fertilizers and everything. But then we're like, if our cattle have been well fed, can they spend the night in the crawls? And because each household has got like six animals, 7 large animals, now you need to be together with about 5, 6, 7, up to 10 households to then regroup. There is a social glitch. Who will agree for their animals to go to their neighbor without them seeing their animals in the morning? Meats come in, all doubts and things come in. So when we started, let me share a bit of a little numbers thing. In 2021, only 12 households were like, would love to try this. We're like, okay. But then what we did in the 12 households, the harvest was so good. And then what do you do to encourage healthy, do we call it competition or healthy collaboration? Those who they've put in livestock with more households. At the field day, you also create a way of giving prizes of what farmers will need. For the group that was well collaborated, the farmer that mixed the crops most, because you've taught them all the agroecological principles. So the farmer who mixed the crops most, the farmer with the most beautiful crop, but based on agroecological principles. And then from that field day, the next year, you find 25 households are joining in. And then the last year we added in livestock health, the importance of us as a group taking care of livestock. We created a community fund, and then Igugu Trust will also fundraise to support this. And then we have 82 households doing this agroecological farming. And this is sometimes how the results look like. And the farmer would get like maybe twice the yield than normal in a small plot, sandy, same soils, just a different management of the soil health and what enhances the soil. So including early planting, covering the crop. You can barely see any soil at the top there because there's pumpkin, there's everything under that maize crop. So even if the rains delay a little bit, the farmer has got a bit of grace to continue until the next rain. But here, at the first sign of rain, really, the farmer suffers, even if you added manure on the ground, and worse more if you didn't add any. So your chances get lesser and less to get a decent harvest. And then this is the picture from last week. So I'm really, really glad that we could do this after the El Nino effect was seen. So crop field on the left, same day, a suffering crop under scorching heat, lacked mulching, was late at planting. And so you can almost guarantee loss because they were saying if the week ends without us having rain, this is over. And then you have this farmer here, same soils, same everything, but they planted very early. And then they had their soil covered. They had lots of mulch, a lot of commitment they put into this. Of course, the fruiting may be delayed because now I think the tasseling and the fruiting of the grains should be seen already, or at least picking some water gods, mapudzi, I don't know how you say it in English. So, but all that has delayed because obviously of the natural phenomenon. But you can see that the crop still looks different, but though captured at the same day in the same community. And then relating to crop field farming, to ecological cropping, seed and food systems. And this was something totally new, but totally inspired by being linked to other networks who are into heavy agroecological farming. For me, I'm forever be grateful for the networks in Zim, through Pelham, through Sky, and through AFSA. Because I think as you implement these projects, you also see how can we fortify our own work, how can we continue to celebrate our own efforts. And this was the second year now running with seed fairs and then establishing seed banks. We have 5 seed banks now that are multiplying. We started off with legumes that we bought when we went to the Harare National Seed Fair. And so the farmers are totally inspired because every time, oops, that was my timer, sorry. So because farmers continue to visit Harare, wherever there are network gatherings like this, people get inspired and they say, you know what, we think we can also do this. And so these are some of the seeds that we've started to generate locally. But all the time we build the broader picture towards landscape. If there is no healthy landscape, there can't be any stability in our crop fields because we're losing way more. Transitions again to eating locally or eating sustainably. We started changing what we cook in our meetings. And then we started at first, there are a lot of funny stories where we would fight about someone saying, there's this drink called Mirinda, these fizzy drinks that people were using at the community. But then you're like, no, unfortunately, I'm not able for us to have Mirinda. Can we please have my hair? They're like, what? Who's going to have my hair in this meeting? But now, even if visitors come and there is not supposed to be lunch, you find a community member bringing out a bucket full of sorghum maheu, and everyone just enjoys. Visitors always come out with peanuts, and this is local roadrunner chicken. I've listed all the foods there. And we have a local dessert. Of course, it has sugar, but it's nice. You have to add your own sugar on the side, and mixtures of bambara nuts, peas, and pumpkins, all that stuff. So that's just, and then the social organizing, which is what ties in everyone together. We have a community management group that manages the program and communicates across the 5 villages because they are all unique and different. So it's good to have representation across the board. So hosting visitors. So because now I can't be at the community much, literally I'm very happy this week. The community coordinators and village heads hosted visitors from Zambia, I think Cape Town in Germany that came through the partner ACHM. They showed them the program, how we've designed it, and the learning continues. And I feel like we are growing into a community-based learning center. Local communities that I work with, they love sport. So when we first asked, how can we celebrate, for example, an end of a growing season? There are herders who also play sport. There are women who are responsible for the cropping, but they also love sport. So we have a standing tournament now every May, 25 May, Africa Day Cup. But here we gathered like 600 people. So we have a lunch break where we run quizzes and people win sadza, which is $1 a plate, and then local businesses. And then at the end of the year, they also play more sport. And then we do like a closure of the year. Easy prizes that can be funded by even a person who's passing by can contribute some soccer balls or netballs, and it just brings people together over and above the seed fairs, the livestock fairs, and crop field fairs. So a bit of challenges, which are just extreme weather events, competing initiatives that are unending. I think it's the story of NGOs in tough landscapes, really. And then we've been weaving through social norms and cultural beliefs that sometimes may deter momentum. But I think with lots of facilitation and dialoguing, communities have a way of then building trust. And if someone is still untrusting, I think it's okay. Eventually they will catch on and they'll, yeah. And then poor livestock management norms, because usually we didn't see lots of value in livestock until that is created, and then management becomes better. Otherwise, thank you so much. That was it from my short presentation. No, long presentation.
Hi there. I can't switch my video on.
Oh, sorry. Hold on, John.
Anyway, I don't have to, but I thought.
Try again.
Okay, there we go. Great. Thanks so much, Precious. So many things going round in my mind. I think that I don't know, I suspect the experience you're getting there is probably worth a lot more to wider audiences than maybe you realize. I suppose also going through my mind is having been linked with the holistic management decision-making framework, having first heard about it, I think in 1989. So been linked with it in various ways. And then when I met Precious, also Gertrude, the working quite closely with the Africa Center for Holistic Management. And there's no doubt the power of it is immense. But I think what's fascinating to me personally, others may have an opinion, is the way in which, because I think where the holistic management decision-making framework has struggled is in community situations. It's had a lot of success around the world at a more individual family level, or where there are just fewer decision makers and so on, where you're bringing kind of a lot of people together in a more communal situation. So it's really, I mean, Gertrude made a couple of comments in the chat. I think your experience there is really useful, and also the way you're illustrating, because a big part of it has always been linked to grazing management, and it's kind of well known in relation to grazing management, which we have to remember is huge parts of, I mean, Zimbabwe is, I don't know, 70%, 80% grazing areas. So when you're talking about managing the land, it's a huge part. But I think what you've done really nicely there is it isn't just about grazing areas, it's about the cropping areas, the food and the seed, it's about the social, the celebration. I mean, it's great what's happening there. Yeah, so thank you. I mean, I have some questions, or one or two questions, but I'm sure others may have questions, comments as well. So let's open it up for a bit of discussion. We've got about 20 minutes left, and you might have a lot of questions or comments. If you're new to this, there's other references as well where you can read more. Anybody like to jump in and comment anything that struck you, whether this is new to you or not? And if not, I'll jump in with my question. Okay,
Simon had a question. Simon's got a question.
Did he? Okay, sorry, I'm not.
Chat box.
I think I've not
Yes,
got everyone.
Simon.
I've pressed the wrong thing. Yeah, just jump in. I'm not seeing hands or anything. Simon, go ahead. Simon, you're on mute.
He has asked the question in the chat box.
Oh, okay.
Okay, maybe I can come in.
Please.
Sorry. Thank you, Precious, for the great presentation. Maybe you could shed more light on the statement that you said grazing is more of time than numbers. I don't know if my understanding is like if you put in more time grazing in one area or something like that, probably to regenerate better than maybe bringing more animals. I didn't quite understand that.
Okay.
But sometimes I find the model of African Center for Holistic Management a bit technical. So my question in the chat was, to what extent is it borrowing from the knowledge of the communities, how they used to graze? Because I have seen part of this. You talk about paddocks, and the traditional one would talk about blocks, how they take animal from here to here in blocks rather than paddocks. Anyway, yeah, those are my questions.
Okay, thanks, Simon. Maybe I can just jump in. So starting off with the insight that grazing, the most important thing sometimes is time versus the numbers of animals. I think by time, especially now in the season that we're in, which is the most important season. So we also don't call it rainy season, I think intentionally, because it's a way of reminding us what's the intention of this season. So we call it growing season. So the amount of time that a grass plant is exposed to an animal will determine whether it will recover fully, because we have a short growing season. So the idea is you would rather bring in many animals. So that's why we combine animals. So these 5 villages, across them, they have 680 cattle. So we have maybe two and a half groups of 200 and something animals and 300 and something. So they just come into one place, graze for a few days, and then move to the next paddock, giving the other paddock that's behind us. For example, if you give it up to 60 days of a bit of rain and just recovery, which some people may call partial rest, you know that by the time you come back, maybe it's towards the dry season or non-growing season, you have reserved some forage for your animals, but also you've allowed your land to work through the processes of photosynthesis, which is another story, technical stories that, for example, on farmers level, it doesn't really matter, but there are lots of side benefits to having lots of green plants on the land and roots that are dying consistently, being eaten, but also being left to recover. So that's what I meant. I don't know, Simon, if that is okay. And then your next question on whether this builds, because the Africa Center is the hub, and it's definitely a technical place. So what we've used it for is to go and see what is possible when we move our animals across the landscape. But how you then implement is different from how they would implement it at the Africa Center, because at communities, definitely you build on local knowledge, and they have lots of stories about how they used to keep their animals, amongst lions and everything. And so we use that knowledge is the foundation because I do feel like even Alan Savory himself has said that he learned and deduced the knowledge that he has from just the African rangelands where he used to work as an ecologist. So definitely. And the paddocks, in a sense, I think it's just wording. Some places call them blocks. For us, we call them paddocks, but they are virtual. They don't have fences. You use natural landmarks on the landscape to say, we'll move going this way. Then we call it by a mountain. We don't pass that mountain or we don't pass that stream. So the herders know. But otherwise, we don't have technical paddocks or fencing and stuff.
Great, thanks, Precious. And Simon, if you think of, I mean, you know it much better than I do, but I mean, pastoralists in East Africa, traditional practices were actually, as again, my limited understanding is based on exactly that, moving livestock concentrated and bringing them back after a long time. So those traditional practices were exactly in line with the whole time notion within this planned grazing. So I think there's that possibility to yeah, I think it is about building on local knowledge, because a lot's been distorted in the last sort of 100 years or so. Walter, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, John. Thank you, Precious, for sharing this beautiful story. I think I'm really impressed that you have managed to achieve so much, especially in the background of not having much external resources, which I think maybe was a blessing to some extent, because that really results in a more community-owned, community-driven sort of process when there are no external incentives that are part of the equation. And also that you have achieved so much when part of the period of your implementation was actually during COVID. So it's quite impressive how you have managed to do this work in spite of those seemingly big challenges. I am more interested in the social stability part, because for me that's very crucial and also quite challenging, because human interactions, human relations are always usually riddled with the egos, with conflicts, with various factors, including power relations and all that. So I might want to hear a little bit more about how the community is doing in terms of the social stability pillar. And also just a small question on what the word Igugu means from the local language. I think it's the local term, but I just want to know what it means. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, starting off with the legal question, Igugu means treasure. So Igugu means, oh, so you wanted to say
can
something?
I just jump in on the back of Walter's question? Because as you answer his, I think it would be really interesting to relate how you've seen the holistic management decision-making model help in that social side of things. Sorry.
Yes. Oh, great. Yeah. So Walter, Igugu means treasure. So yeah. Okay, social. I think during the presentation, I expressed the challenge of communities on this side of the world. I think from time to time, you realize that everyone's really focused on themselves more than the communalism. To such an extent that, you know, there are social helps that were part of our community structures. There's a thing called amalima in my language, which means if someone has, maybe you have a big crop and you're harvesting and you made lots of grains and everything, and your small family can't possibly manage to harvest on their own, you'll do ilima, which is a way of saying, you know what, maybe you'll slaughter a goat and brew like maheu or local beer, and then half of the community comes and works with you like for half a day, and your crop field will be done. But then all that was sort of getting lost. And I think where now the holistic management framework has helped, without you pulling the card of saying, you know, this is holistic management, I feel like the facilitator has to be a person who has internalized this thing, and this thing is alive in them first before you try and impose it on the community. Because I think the frustration comes in when you and the community don't understand each other. Because the idea is that communal member, they have an intention of saying, I have to protect what's mine. But you as the facilitator, you can see that, you know, you can actually do so much more if you worked together. But you don't have to come to a place of imposing that by using lots of holistic management words on people. So what I've seen helps for me is asking questions. That's one. Two, to be fair, I feel like the seed fairs and field days, all those celebrations, if you're using holistic management to implement in your community, if you don't use them to design for desire for communities, it's sort of a fascipulation, that's a word that I like, where you use the variables that you think are powerful principles to say, guys, when we are awarding, we'll award someone who would have mixed crop. We are awarding someone, a herder, who has gone out with his livestock the whole season. You know, we're awarding people who are willing to work together because we're trying to build a different thing here altogether. And you find that slowly people jump on. And the social part is the hardest. I promise you, planning holistic plant grazing on a chart will take you maybe 30 minutes if everyone understands. But implementing can never happen if people don't trust each other. So the holistic management frameworks to see if this is taking us to the life that we said we wanted. So if I could share a bit of what I have seen, first of all, because we had so little funding, people are not necessarily generous, but generosity is part of our holistic context. But we called it abundance. But when you say abundance and you translate it into our language, it just means I have, again, it brings abundance to me alone. But when you define it further, it says giving, abounding myself, but also being generous. So when we have workshops, people would bring like a plate of mealie meal, a plate of cowpeas, and then we bring some parts of the food that maybe needs to be bought from town. And that has gone on from the time we didn't have funding, even now when we have. And then we had a situation where we had visitors who wanted to walk across all the 5 clusters because we were getting some sort of someone coming to help us develop our work, and especially at organizational level because we're small. So we got funded to do like an organizational development. I was shocked. We told the community members, don't worry, the visitors will just come. They want to see your landscape. They want to see how you're doing things. But at every stop in the 5 clusters, there was either maheu or semp and beans and a nice laid table with plates. So we were eating the whole day. Something that would have never happened. People wouldn't pull out their food without, you know, like, no, we don't have enough. So now you see that generosity coming in, and that I don't think that it's separate from holistic management, because the idea is to create that thriving social space. And it doesn't mean that there are no issues in between, but communities are getting more and more equipped with, you know, what's the bigger picture? What are we looking for? So I feel like that's what has helped. And being small, you have bigger organizations trying to see, you know, this is nice, 5 villages, 680 animals. Let's just, you know, maybe we can worm our way through and take over this. And the NGO world, this mafia world, I've been learning. But 3 years, 4 years on, we are still there. We have communal coordinators, support from leaders, that you meet at different intervals to update. This is where we are going. This is how things are. So yeah, that's just a bit of a winding story.
Yeah, great. Wow.
Yeah.
No, it's fantastic. Thanks, Precious. And we're reaching the end of the time. And I think what's really struck me is the way you are obviously facilitating at community level in a way which everybody on this call will be in tune with. There's the sensitivity, there's the question, there's the you're avoiding the jargon, but what I think you also said, and I think that's a really interesting comment, is that, or you implied that being steeped within that holistic framework, the holistic management decision-making framework, has really helped you as a facilitator. So you avoid using all its jargon, and which I think has been a problem with it, particularly at community levels. But I mean, Gertrude's also put interesting comments in the chat that relate to this. But I think you are, in a way, testimony to the strength of the holistic management decision-making framework. But it's also, you're a facilitator. And in a way, you have that, I would call it, training for transformation, sensitivity, and all of that, and so on. And that Gertrude and Simon and Fasila here linked to the ABN methodologies, you have those as well. That what matters is local knowledge, building on that, traditional practices, all those foods we saw. So it's, yeah, so it just affirms for me, anyway, that there's a lot of potential and power in trying to bring some of these different experiences together, to keep doing it. So, and you've done that a little bit. I think it's hard to give all of you such a short time to present when it's complex, it's difficult, and you can't really present it all, but you've given us a really good taste, I think, and I think others have endorsed that in the chat. So thank you so much for that. I'm just thinking about the next session, so that we keep learning from each other. And I was just wondering, Janoka, I don't want to put you on the spot, so you can also just say, you can think about it, but I was wondering whether, so right at the beginning, when there were actually much fewer of us, you gave us a little bit of a taste of training for transformation and its approach and how it works and so on. But I thought it might be quite interesting if you were able to do another session on training for transformation, just to bring everybody in this group. I mean, there's mixed understanding here. Some people know about it. I think a lot of people have heard about it, but don't really know what it means. I was quite linked to it quite a long time ago, so a bit out of date. I'm trying to read up. It would be, I think it'd be really useful for this group, if it was possible in the next monthly session, to kind of update us or give us a little bit more of a taste of training for transformation. I know it, and I'm aware that it's unfair asking people to present in such a short time, but I think it would be great if you could do that. I don't know, am I putting on the spot?
Okay, thank you so much, John, and thank you, Precious, for the presentation. I'm learning along as we move along from all these transformative approaches and how each one is doing in their own environment. Of course, yes, we can. I just have to check the date to see if we are available, myself and Tombi. When would it be the next session?
Yeah, that's a good question. Doug, what were we doing? We were normally doing we were doing the first Friday, but we made it the second Friday in February because the first one was no good.
It would be the 8th of March.
Okay. Okay, I think we can do it, the 8th of March. And what would you like? A short presentation and then a bit of, yeah, I'll discuss with Ntombi and we'll find the best way. Okay.
Could I be a thorn and because I've got a big meeting on the 8th. Is there any chance we could make it on the 15th?
Cool. Yeah, I won't be 12th, 13th. Well, let me also, can I check with Ntombi and just get back to you? The 15th.
Yeah. Others, is that okay if we make it the 15th instead?
Yeah, fine by me.
Others okay with the 15th of March? Based on whether Ntombi and Janoka can confirm that. That's okay as
Right.
well, too.
I will be watching some recordings.
Oh, yeah, no, of course. No, sure, we'll definitely record it for you.
Right.
Yeah,
John, then I'll confirm with you around next
Okay.
week, Tuesday, okay?
okay, great. You
By
could do
Tuesday,
that,
I
and then
confirm if we
the-
can do. Yeah,
tentatively we make it the 15th of March. And we still, and maybe after that we kind of take stock. Where are we? We've had these presentations. Not after your one, but the next meeting, we sort of say, where are we? What is this telling us? How do we move forward? We have still got this idea, possibility of trying to get together to kind of design some kind of curriculum or something like that, where we see some kind of synthesis of all this. So hopefully, and I'm sure various ideas are turning in your mind, so maybe that could be the one after, is we go back to looking at how do we move this all forward. I've heard from some others as well who, I think people are seeing the potential of linkage. It's just how do we go about it? Okay, so we're 3 minutes over our hour. Anyone else final comment before we close, with the idea that perhaps on the 15th, or tentatively on the 15th, we'll hear a little bit more about training for transformation and their approach over the last 50 years or so. Any final thoughts? Otherwise, thanks so much, Precious, again, and good luck with everything going forward. And we'll wait to hear the news Precious is expecting, as I mentioned, I think in the email. So all the best, and thanks so much.
All the best, Precious.
all the best, Precious.
Thanks.
You'll be in our
Okay, cheers.
thoughts.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody, and we'll keep this moving. I think there's huge potential. We're feeling our way, exploring. Okay, have a good day, have a good weekend.
Thank you, John, for organizing and putting everything together for us.